Welcome to Rock Your Reinvention. I'm Karen Freeland, your guide to ditching corporate and designing a life you love. If you're ready to shift your mindset, boost your confidence, and finally take action on that dream career or business, you're in the right place. It's your time. Let's rock your reinvention. Today is a big milestone because Rock Your Reinvention just hit 100 episodes. So whether it's your first time listening or you've been a ride or die along since the beginning, thank you for being here. Now, in case you didn't notice, I unveiled a new look for Rock Your Reinvention this week. I have been going through quite the quiet reinvention over the past year, which is what we're going to talk about today. But I felt like the show needed an updated, simple, more direct look and feel for the next 100 episodes. And I want you to know that I am 100% committed to showing up and delivering the help you need to ditch corporate and reclaim your life now and well into the future. I've got some great guests and topics lined up for you. But if you ever have something that you want me to discuss on the show, you can always email me, Karen, Karin, at KarenFreeland.com. All right, today we are talking about quiet reinvention. And you might be wondering, what the heck is that? When I started reinventing my life 5-6 years ago, I was all about loud reinvention, bold reinvention. I basically reinvented my life in the public eye, and I blew stuff up. I changed careers. I started engaging in hobbies. I got in the best shape of my life, moved my entire family 5 states away, stopped drinking as much. I started volunteering and raising money for various causes. I mean, when I say everything changed, everything changed. But about a year ago, I had an experience that started to alter the trajectory of my life. And at the same time, I began growing deeper in my faith. And slowly, the combination of those two things began to change my interior and soften and move things in ways that hadn't been moved before. And so quiet reinvention has actually been happening within me. And it's so subtle that most people don't even realize the change. Now, I am going to speak a little bit about religion today more than usual. And here's why. Imagine you asked me, Karen, your skin looks great. What do you use? And I tell you all about my moisturizers and my cleansers and the toners that I use, the face masks. But I don't actually tell you that I get Botox every 4 to 6 months. So you go out and you try my routine and then you wonder why you have wrinkles. It is because I left out a key component. Well, the same thing is true in reinvention. If I'm not telling you that I have these movements in my life and how God is working, then I'm not really sharing the whole picture with you. I'm not being honest and transparent. But here's what's really important to remember. I'm not telling you what to think or believe. I'm simply sharing my experience for illustrative purposes so you can get the whole picture. I'm being vulnerable today and really giving you a sneak peek at what I haven't been sharing anywhere else. There are 4 words that have really shaped my quiet reinvention: obedience, surrender, trust, and humility. And those words, even just saying them out loud, I'm like, oh, they're so hard to really embrace. So I'm going to share some stories with you today to illustrate those points, but also in hopes that it's going to open your heart and move something within you as well. So let's start with obedience. And as kind of a rebel without a cause growing up, I've never really been a big fan of the word obedience, but I've been starting to come around to the concept. Last September, my family and I had a camping trip planned. And a few days before we were going to go, the whole forecast was rain, so we had to cancel. And secretly, I was really ecstatic because it was the same weekend as the gala for a company called Switch. And Switch is a grassroots nonprofit that is fighting to end sex trafficking in Greenville, South Carolina. And Tim Tebow was coming to speak, and I really, really wanted to hear him. I had become familiar with this organization through my volunteer work at the Junior League. So I beg the people at Switch to let me get a ticket last minute because tickets are no longer for sale, and they bend over backwards to get me in. I go to the event and they have a whole silent auction, and I'm like buying all this stuff. I bid on 2 Kendra Scott necklaces. I get these Max Lucado books, a whole bunch of things that I didn't actually win. And they put me at a table in the very back of the room. I'm like the last row of tables, but I'm dead center. And a couple minutes into the program, this speed painter comes out. And if you've never seen a speed painter before, it is so cool. They play music, and the artist does this live canvas painting right in front of you in about 20 minutes. It's super impressive and very entertaining. But I'm just minding my own business in my gala dress, looking fab, conversing with total strangers, eating my chicken dinner. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, I wonder what this painter's creating. And I look up from my food, and I'm mid-bite, like I'm chewing my dinner. And it just hits me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Jesus, right? There he is in a crown of thorns. And his head is kind of tilted, right? So he's looking dead smack at me. And all of a sudden, I hear this voice, and I'm like half choking on my chicken. And it's, Karen, what are you doing to stop sex trafficking? And now I'm freaking out because I'm like, did anybody else hear that voice? And I'm looking around to everybody at the table, and nobody's looking at me. They're all doing their own thing. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what do you want me to do? So now I'm like negotiating with God. I'm like, I donated a bunch of money and I bought all these silent auction items. Like, what else do you want me to do? And he just repeats himself. Karen, what are you doing to stop sex trafficking? And at this moment, I'm bawling, and I'm trying not to let my table mates see me crying. And it was just in that moment that I just surrendered right then and there. And I was like, okay, Lord, I hear you. I'm going to sign up to volunteer tomorrow. I don't know what you want me to do. I don't know if I'm qualified for this, but I'm going to do it because you have called me so very clearly in this moment to something, and I have to follow through. So the next day, I sign up to volunteer. And I joined what's called the prevention team, which is a group of adults who goes into schools, typically high schools and middle schools, to train teenagers on the red flags and dangers of sex trafficking so that they can better protect themselves. It's a cause I've been incredibly passionate about for the past year. It's funny because now I know he planned the rain so I couldn't go camping. It was all by design. For me, this marked that obedience that I mentioned. God doesn't ask us for success. He doesn't ask us to achieve these accolades and the things that our society says are success. But he does ask us to be obedient to his call. Where has God been calling you to obedience in your life? Have you been listening? Why or why not? I'm not pretending that this is easy by any stretch of the imagination, right? And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the hard choices I've had to make lately. But what would happen if you started being more obedient? I know it can be scary. It can be unsettling. I didn't really know what he was calling me to. There were so many unknowns, but I couldn't ignore that voice. And sometimes we find that when we are obedient, we actually enter the best phases of our lives. So the next word that marked this quiet reinvention is surrender. Do you ever hold on to things longer than you should? Like you have a plan and come hell or high water, you are going to make that work. Yeah, for me, This was my Facebook group, Successful Working Women Rocking Reinvention. Back in 2020, when I started coaching, everyone had a Facebook group. It was the business model for coaches like myself. But Facebook has changed a lot. And quite frankly, I just don't want to spend as much time on social as I was. But more than anything, I felt like I was pouring so much time and energy into this Facebook community and getting little to no interaction. 2 years ago, my VA told me, Karen, shut this thing down. This isn't working. Let it go. But I couldn't do it. It was my baby. And I also felt like by closing it down that I was somehow failing or admitting failure. So this summer, I decided I'm going to do one last ditch effort. And if it works, the summer reinvention series, then great. I'll keep the Facebook group. If it doesn't, I won't. I'm like, God, this is up to you. It's in your hands. You are master of the universe. You tell me what to do. And spoiler alert, it didn't change a thing, right? It just ended up being 7 of us basically talking to ourselves. So I had to keep the promise that I made to myself to let it go. I want you to hear that again. I had to keep the promise that I made to myself. And I know that you have made promises to yourself that you may not be keeping right now. And I want you to revisit those promises. Believe me, there was a piece of myself that was trying to negotiate with me, with God. Maybe summer's a bad time. No, Karen, this hasn't worked for 4 years. It's time to let it go. So I had to surrender to reality. And I didn't take it as a punishment or that I somehow wasn't cut out for coaching, this wasn't meant to be. And I think a lot of times as women, we do that. When something doesn't work the way that we want it to work, we see it as a failure and we make it mean something about ourselves. And the way I chose to view it was I did everything I could think of to create value in there. And now that it has not worked the way I envisioned, I'm freed up to channel that energy into my newsletter, into my podcast, into LinkedIn, into Instagram, right? I have plenty of other places that I can create amazing community. And I'll be even more effective because I won't be spread so thin. I can have a lot more impact because my show and my public social media accounts can reach a lot more people than a private Facebook group. Another thing that may surprise you is that I've decided to surrender and let go of something else. And that is my first book, my memoir, The Ins and Outs of My Vagina. Now, I will tell you that was not an easy pill to swallow, especially considering I've invested over $40,000 in producing, marketing, and distributing this book. But as I began going into the schools and educating these kids on sex trafficking, I just started to feel this pull away from my book. I saw sex, I saw our bodies just in a different light. And I remember a couple years ago hearing someone say, the devil can promote you too. And that has stuck with me. But it was something that I didn't really want to hear because it was an inconvenient truth. And I'd been asking myself, did I misunderstand the call to write my first book? Was this not of God? And I wasn't sure, so I wanted to take some baby steps to help me discern. I've been working with a spiritual director, and so we're doing a lot of work on discernment. And this is something really practical that you can do as well when you're struggling to make a decision. You can take some baby steps in a specific direction and kind of try it on for size. So I went on social and I started deleting all of my posts about the book. And I found that some were super easy to ditch, like the ones about giveaways or certain podcasts that I've been on. But there were a few that were really hard, like winning the gold medal in Miami at the Reader's Favorite Book Fest and my 1-year anniversary post about the book. And in that moment, I just couldn't hit delete. And so I didn't. I left those there. And over the course of the next few weeks, I started taking it down from the website. I'm not going to be renewing the ins and outs of my vagina.com. I was untagging myself from posts. And the more I did, the more I knew this was the right move. It was yet another thing that was no longer an authentic representation of who I am today, of who I have become. It wasn't the legacy that I wanted to leave. And I think as we go through the seasons of our lives, we go through these changes, we go through these pivots, these reinventions, where what suited us before, the old version of us, is no longer suiting us. It's no longer who we are. And it's unsettling sometimes, but it's also very freeing. So what do you need to let go of? What do you need to surrender to in order to achieve your ideal reinvention? Don't trick yourself into thinking that there's nothing to let go of, because we all have something. And sometimes it's just the idea that we can control everything, including others. And we have to let go of that. That's a big one for a lot of my clients. I was coaching a woman recently who didn't get offered a job after an absolutely stellar interview. And she was beating herself up. Like, what did I do wrong? I thought it went so well. If I can't get that job, I don't think anyone's going to hire me. And I had to remind her, she had no control over whether someone hires her or not. She has no control over the politics in the office. They might have just been putting that interview out because HR told them they had to. Right? You don't know what else is at play. The only thing she has control over is how well she preps and how well she performs in the interview. The rest is up to the hiring manager and fate. So remember that. What do you need to let go of? What do you need to surrender to? Lastly, trust and humility have been shaping this season of quiet reinvention. And I already told you that I'm a volunteer at Switch in my free time. Well, about a month ago, I reached out to the operations director to set up a meeting and discuss the vision for the prevention team this year. I'm like, okay, what are we doing? What schools do we want to get into? Like, let's go. I'm ready to dig in. And when we connected, she was like, I have to tell you something. I'm actually stepping down and they're looking for my replacement. But she said that it was only part-time and they were having a really hard time filling the role. And without thinking, it was a total Holy Spirit moment. I just go, I might be interested in that. And as the words are leaving my mouth, I started sweating. I was like, wait, I'm having a whole inner dialogue now. I'm like, Karen, why did you just say that? I don't know. It might be a good fit. What about your business? I'll figure it out. I could do both. Part-time work is actually perfect for me. And before I knew it, I was emailing the executive director my resume and scheduling an interview. Fortunately, I had just started with my spiritual director, and I was able to set up an emergency meeting to discern whether this was the right move for me or not. Of course, all weekend, God kept sending me signals that he wanted me to accept the role. It was so clear. And after that and the meeting with my spiritual director, I'm excited to share that I did. Now, if you are a client, do not worry. Like I said, it is part-time and you are still my number one priority. Absolutely nothing changes there. But what has changed, what has expanded and morphed is the purpose in my life. And this is where humility starts to come in. I had been feeling really exhausted from living my life out loud for the last 5 years. I just didn't want to constantly have to post and be like, oh, look at me. I won SC Best in Business, or I won the best Instagram in Greenville. And it just all started to feel really vain. And I wanted to live a more humble life. And one day I was driving in the car and I'm just talking to God like I do. And I was like, okay, God, corporate definitely wasn't it. My first book, that wasn't it either. Coaching is it, but I feel like I have more to give. Where do you want me? What are you calling me to next? And within a month, I had the opportunity at Switch. Now, here's the best part. And as a high-achieving woman who probably really values her title, you're going to appreciate this. When I get the offer, it's not the director of operations role that I thought it was going to be. No, it's ministry coordinator. Y'all, as someone who has taken great pride in her title over the years, I mean, I love telling people, oh, I was chief of staff for the president of a $13 billion division. It was like the biggest humbling moment ever. And I had to give myself a pep talk about this. Like, Karen, it's not about the title. It's about stopping sex trafficking. And I can't think of anything more important than that. So we're not going to not take the job because you don't like the title. And actually, I'm totally fine with the title. And I'm actually really excited to tell people I'm the ministry coordinator because it just helps reinforce that humility, right? And that it's not about title, it's about mission. So here's my question for you. Where do you need to trust more in your life? How is pride getting in the way from you living your purpose? What would be possible if you took a humbler approach to your career or in your relationships? You might take that sidestep job that actually would be a better fit for you. You might walk away and go, you know what? I don't need to earn all this money anymore. I could actually get away with 80%, 60%, maybe less. Because it's not about the paychecks. But without tapping into humility, it's very hard to make those moves. And here's the craziest part about all of this quiet reinvention. This is the biggest month in August of 2025 that I have had since May of 2024. Let me tell you what, that is 100% a blessing for being obedient, surrendering, trusting, and embracing humility. Biggest month. Maybe it's time for you to make some subtle shifts in your life and see how they create big changes for the better. I hope you enjoyed the behind the scenes view of my quiet reinvention. Now it's your turn to go rock your reinvention. See you next week.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you're inspired to take action by committing to one of the tips or strategies we talked about in today's episode. If you want more accountability and support, I've got your back. Book a complimentary Empowered Exit Strategy call today. Visit KarenFreeland.com to learn more and book your 45-minute session. Until next time, stay fabulous.